I would like to welcome you all for today's lesson under emergency incidents. And today we are going to focus on lesson 4, where we shall talk about a response agency management system. We are going to talk about response agency management system. Once again, my names are Mr. Wayne Magani Shkuvu, Director at Brand Institute of Forensics and Security, and I am very happy to be presenting these slides to you. Before we continue, I want you to take note that we are going to basically focus on agencies that respond to disasters in Kenya, or agencies that respond to incidences. And as an assignment, before we continue, I would like all of you to do a small write-up and hand it over to Chris or Fred about the differences between an emergency, a disaster, and a crisis. What are the differences between an emergency, a disaster, and a crisis? So that is assignment. That is assignment number 1. So please take it very serious. First you need to define an emergency, define a disaster, define a crisis, and what are the differences between this. And then you hand it over to Chris. He will forward it to me, and then I'll have a look at it to see whether we are moving in the same page. Now, quickly, we are going to start and say emergency preparedness in Kenya. You know the situation. The situation is very difficult in Kenya. The situation is still not very clear. Disaster and emergency preparedness in Kenya is perceived to be fragmented, with the country often better at reactive rather than proactive action. Legal and institutional frameworks, except for the Kenya Meteorological Department, below institutions are in charge of disaster preparedness, response, and coordination. There are also disaster risk reduction focal persons in various ministries. Well, what we say is that in our case scenario in Kenya, the situation is very fragmented. There isn't a clear way on how to handle disasters or how to handle emergencies when they occur. However, we are moving there. I know the government is doing its best. The military is doing itself, the police, the responders. We are doing our best. We are developing people, developing security people. One day, one time, we shall be there where we shall be able to respond to emergencies and crises in a very effective way. We are going to look at number 1, the National Drought Management Authority. Now, National Drought Management Authority. These are some of the agencies in Kenya which have a responsibility of responding to disasters, mainly disasters. We talk about established in 2011 through a State Corporations Act following the 2011 drought. The National Drought Management Authority leads on drought preparedness and response in areas that have these issues. It is an authority under the Ministry of Devolution and Planning. Over time, the DMA has progressed and received government, parliament, and development partner support. This has been strengthened by, among other things, the Act gives the National Drought Management Authority the responsibility for policy, coordination of drought response, putting in place systems of drought, early warning, and linking the country's drought management to international processes. So we are talking about drought, drought kiangazi. And then we also see another agency that has a responsibility of responding to these issues is the Water Resource Management Authority and the Ministry of Water and Irrigation. Mainly, they deal with the flood preparedness and management, brings together the Water Resources Management Authority and the Ministry of Water. The Ministry of Water is responsible for policy issues on water resources. Responsibilities for flood response are more diverse and link up with other agencies. So the National Drought Management Authority deals with drought issues, kiangazi. Mainly, wakati kuna kiangazi sana, people need help. People need help in terms of shelter, in terms of food, in terms of health facilities. So the National Drought Management Authority deals with that. When it comes to floods, mainly huku Budalangi area, that area is usually affected by flooding a lot. Even currently here Kenya, it is raining a lot, there will be flooding. This agency that we call the Water Resource Management Authority, together with the Ministry of Water and Irrigation, deal with issues related to flooding. And then Ministry of Health, you also know the Ministry of Health through the Division of Disease Surveillance and Epidemic Response Unit is responsible for providing leadership on preparedness for human disease outbreaks. You saw the Ministry of Health played a very major role during the recent COVID-19 pandemic. So, and there are still health issues existing every day, health disasters existing every day in our country, and it is the Ministry of Health which is has the responsibility of managing these issues. The Division of Health Emergencies and Disaster Risk Management, on the other hand, it's responsible for response. So when it comes to response, we have the Division of Health Emergencies and Disaster Risk Management. Health is now a devolved function, and there are systems for disease surveillance and response at the country level. However, our respondents felt this need strengthening. So when we are talking about these issues, you may also open your mind. There are also opportunities you can apply for as a security professional. For example, in the Division of Health Emergencies and Disaster Risk Management, there are opportunities where the government offers lucrative positions for special security operation responders and security personnel. So those are some of the things that you may also need to think about. And then we also talk about the National Disaster Operations Center. As the name suggests, the National Disaster Operations Center is responsible for coordinating all disaster response operations in the country and was leading the country's El Nino flood response in 2015. It does this through partnering with other actors such as the police and the Kenya Red Cross. And then besides response, the National Disaster Operations Center also plays a preparedness role by managing the country's disaster loss. It has also led disaster drills for man-made disasters. Drought, we spoke about drought. And then the National Disaster Management Unit was established through a presidential directive in 2013 and sits within the Ministry of Interior. It is seen as the government unit responsible for disaster risk management in the country, but also carries out some response activities. Led by the National Police Service, its operations cut across both natural and man-made disasters. The National Disaster Management Unit has established the country's emergency response plan and standard operating procedures. So you may need to learn more about the National Disaster Management Unit, and it is an area also that may be of interest to you as a security professional. And then we have the Kenya Meteorological Department. Mnajua hii, it deals with weather issues, advisory, and it is the government department that all government agencies rely on for weather information. Respondents provided mixed perceptions about the Kenya Meteorological Department. During our research, respondents provided mixed perceptions. Some people say the Kenya Meteorological Department is not effective, or it gives wrong information, or their vision is not in line with what is exactly happening. So respondents provided mixed perceptions about the Kenya Meteorological Department, but it is also another area that may be of interest to you. And then we say government respondents expressed trust in the department and its accuracy of information. Respondents outside the government felt that the department would provide more timely information in a more innovative manner for it to lead to faster decision making and response. At the county level, the department has representatives who will better disseminate the weather information to guide disaster preparedness. And then we see the Kenya Red Cross. I've worked with the Kenya Red Cross, not as their employee, but in partnership when we were responding to the Westgate terrorist attack. I was working closely with some of the Kenya Red Cross officers, and I can say that the Kenya Red Cross plays a major role in our country when it comes to disasters. When it comes to disasters, the Kenya Red Cross is very, very influential. The Kenya Red Cross is an auxiliary to the government's humanitarian services and works closely with the government and other humanitarian disasters. Recognized as a first responder to emergencies, it has gained traction as the go-to institution both at national and subnational level. All our respondents felt that the Kenya Red Cross does well in response, but also has a preparedness system in place. So you see, even during the research, respondents mentioned that the Kenya Red Cross is really up to the challenge. So, and they have also a section that deals with the disaster risk management. They have a section that deals with the disaster risk management. So the Kenya Red Cross is very effective. I have worked with the officers and I know how they do their work, and they play a very important role. And then the Red Cross activities, as we have seen, the focus is on three thematic areas: disaster risk reduction, food security, life and livelihood, and environmental management and climate change adaptation. You see, it goes into areas related to climate change adaptation, issues related to food security and livelihood, and issues related to disaster risk reduction. In line with the Sendai framework for disaster risk, the department works with vulnerable communities to build knowledge and understanding around disaster risk, strengthen community, local and national level governments structures to manage disaster risk, working with the different donors and partners to invest in disaster risk programming and enhancing disaster preparedness in order to strengthen community resilience. So the Red Cross, you know, it is role, and it is a very leading organization that helps in management of disasters. And then we have the Kenya Humanitarian Partnership Team. This is a platform that brings together the UN agencies, donor agencies, NGOs, private sector, local organizations, national and subnational government. The main role of the Kenya Humanitarian Partnership Team is to ensure strategic coordination and coherence of humanitarian action by the government of Kenya and national and international humanitarian actors towards better humanitarian preparedness and response. So we say the Kenya Humanitarian Partnership. It works with the government and international humanitarian actors towards a better humanitarian preparedness and response. We also see to promote government ownership. The Ministry of Interior chairs this organization, and the UN Resident Coordinator is the co-chair, who meets every quarter at senior level and monthly at operational level. While the Kenya Humanitarian Partnership Team is not a formal government a formal arrangement, acting more out of the goodwill of the participants. Respondents feel that it plays a useful role in influencing government and advocating for better preparedness and response. It is also well recognized by development partners and UN agencies as it provides direct access to the government. And then we also have the National Disaster Risk Management Authority and the County Disaster Risk Management Committees. The Disaster Management Act 2019 establishes the National Disaster Risk Management Authority as the body that will lead and coordinate the country's approach to disaster prevention, preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery. From our interviews with the NGOs, government agency, it appears that the NADIMA will bring together those other agencies that deal with response to disaster and preparedness and also disaster prevention and mitigation. So this is a government arm that deals with coordination of the country's approach to disaster prevention, preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery. And then the Kenya National Policy for Disaster Management, the highlights. The National Policy for Disaster Management in Kenya aims at the establishment and strengthening of the disaster management institutions. partnerships and networking, and mainstreaming disaster risk reduction in the development process in Kenya to strengthen the resilience of vulnerable groups of cooperative with political potential disasters, areas that are facing potential disasters. What we are talking about some of the agencies that you may know, and some of them you do not know them, but they deal with the disaster reduction, they deal the disaster preparedness, they deal with the disaster response, they deal with the disaster mitigation, they deal with the disaster recovery in Kenya. These are some of the agencies. Besides the military and the police, there are other agencies also in Kenya who respond, who deal, work on issues related to disasters. And then we say the policy document contains 6 chapters that provide background information on disaster patterns and profiles in Kenya, including existing categories. Justification summarizes the existing initiatives for disaster management and the consequent problems and challenges. The systematic approach gives guidelines and principles for effective disaster management and code of conduct expected of different stakeholders involved in disaster management in Kenya. Also, it provides for enactment by Parliament for a legislative provision for effective disaster management by establishment of an institutional framework that is legally recognized and embedded within the government structures. Innovative ways of mobilizing resources, managing them, and accounting for them properly have also been provided for, together with a vigorous monitoring and evaluation framework, not only to monitor the progress in the implementation of this policy, but also to undertake regular disaster risk profiling and monitoring in order to be more prepared for disasters. When we talk more about the highlights, we see that this organization was developed in March 2009 and approved by the Kenya and Cabinet in May 2018. Highlights the current disaster management initiative, provides for systematic approach to disaster management, outlines the policy and legal institutional arrangements, provides for structures and procedures in resource mobilization, management, and accountability, and allows for monitoring, evaluation, and research in disaster management projects. The agencies we have seen, the agencies we have discussed in brief, are agencies that, as I have said, they work closely with the government of Kenya and other international partners in response to disasters, in disaster mitigation, in disaster recovery, in disaster preparedness. These agencies play a very major role in helping communities or in helping people in our societies who have been affected by disasters. And it is important for you as a security professional, when we talk about managing of incidences, it is important for you to understand which arms of the government plays a role in disaster risk reduction and disaster risk management. Also, it is very important, as I said earlier, for you to do a research and understand the difference between a crisis, an emergency, and a disaster. Or let's start with an emergency, a disaster, and a crisis. What are the differences? What are the differences? Sit down, do that assignment, and let me have the feedback. For today, I have used a few minutes to cover these few slides, only almost 20 minutes, so that we can combine it with lesson 3. If you have not done lesson 3, then you should do lesson 3 together with the lesson 4 this Saturday. So next Saturday, we move to lesson 5, so that we can get room to cover also other areas that will be of great importance to you. With those few remarks, I want to say thank you very much for listening to me. We will meet again this coming weekend. I am doing well. I am at Northwest Pacific, a place called Spokane, Washington State, United States of America, and I'm very happy to be here. I'm learning a lot with the organizations that I'm working for, the people that I'm visiting, the people that I'm meeting on a daily basis, how they handle issues, how they handle disasters. It is very interesting. here at United States, if you call 911, then within 2 minutes or 3 minutes, they will be at your location, wherever you are. Within 3 minutes, they will be at your location. And it starts with the fire responders, and then you'll see the ambulances. And if it is a criminal matter, then the police. Things are structured very well. But I know our country, we are struggling a little bit, but I know we are moving there. And one time we shall be able to coordinate things more effectively. I just wanted to share a little bit of insights into what is happening here related to emergencies, disasters, and crisis. Thank you very much. See you this coming weekend.